Hello everyone and welcome to Tombstone Disc Golf. Have you ever picked up a disc and thought to yourself, I wonder how this is going to react when I throw it? Well, today I'm going to shed a little light on that subject. Stay tuned. What's up, TDG family? This week what we're going to do is we're going to break down the disc ratings. Just to let you guys know exactly what the numbers that are on some of the discs that you buy really mean. Some folks that I've talked to, there's a little misconception about some of the numbers on here, and I've done some educating of myself and trying to make sure I give you guys the correct information. I know I had some beliefs that wasn't quite right in the beginning when I first started disc golfing, but we'll talk about that as we run through everything. So let's jump right into it. Most of you guys are familiar with disc, and I have a couple of discs sitting right here in front of me. I have a Latitude Maul on this disc. You can see at the bottom. It has a S7, G7, T-2, and F1. Well, SGTF, what the heck? Well, let me tell you what that is. S is for speed, G is for glide, T is for turn, and F is for fade. Now, some of the discs actually have it spelled out on it, like the West Side disc. Just about every West Side disc you get, when it has the standard stamp on it, it's going to have this little quad area over here, and it'll have the numbers, and it actually spells it out underneath the numbers what they are, whether it's the speed, glide, turn, fade, and those are the keys to knowing what your disc is, how your disc is going to react when you throw it. Also, I've got a Innova Shrike right here. This one just has the numbers on it. It just has 13, 6, -2, and 2 on it. So what does that really mean? Well, I'm going to tell you, the speed number on the disc is key. Basically, what that number does is it will tell you just how hard you need to throw that disc in order for it to react like the other numbers say. So the speed is kind of the key to the whole thing. You know, you've got your glide, your turn, and your fade. Well, specifically on your turn and your fade, if you're not throwing the disc at the speed it's rated for, then it's not going to react the way the turn and the fade say. So that like I said, and I can't say it enough, is the speed. Now, I'm guilty of this, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people are guilty of it as well. I'll say that when I first started buying disc, I wanted to throw it far. I wanted to throw it hard. But my throwing technique wasn't that great. And really and truly, today I'm still working on it. And this has been 2 years later. But I've gone out when I first started golfing, and I grabbed a 13 disc. I think it was a Sheriff. And I tried and I tried to throw that, and it just would not react the way the numbers reflected. Well, fast forward, year and a half later, I can go out and throw the Sheriff, and it will react the way I expect it to, based on the turn and the fade numbers. But that took some work and practice. So now that I've kind of driven that home, let's talk about the number itself of speed. Well, the numbers, they range from 1 to 14. I think there's even a couple of 15 speeds out there. Well, those numbers reflect, like I said before, how hard you need to throw the disc. Now, keep in mind, if I had my Innova Shrike, which is a 13 speed disc, and I have my Infinite Disc Pharaoh, which is also a 13-speed disc. Just because they both have 13 on it doesn't mean I need to throw them both at the same speed. All right, don't let your heads explode. It's not that deep. Now, what I'm getting at here, and the reason why I say that, is because the numbering system that the manufacturers put on their disc, they're really to give you a general idea of their other discs that they have, to let you know that, hey, if I throw, let me grab one here real quick. Let me find something. If I throw my Innova Shrike at a speed 13, and I throw my Innova T-Bird 3, which is a speed 8, you can use those two relations in comparison with each other to know the speed difference you need to throw this T-Bird 3 versus your Shrike. Now, on the same note, I've got a couple of Discmania discs, as you all well know if you watch the In the Bags. I've got my PD, which is a speed 10 disc, and I've got my FD, which is a speed 7 disc. Then I have a generalization. I know the different speed, the more power I need to put on one versus the other, just based off the speed difference. And really and truly, that comes in time. You're going to throw the disc when you first start playing. You're going to try to throw the disc a ton. You're probably going to end up hurting yourself. So I'm here to tell you today, don't throw it hard. Once you get your form down, then you can work into it. In other words, don't throw out of your shoes. You don't want to mess up your shoulder. You don't want to mess up your elbow. You want to enjoy the sport. So as you figure out your form, and you can throw it a little harder, more accurate, things like that, you can start moving into those higher speeds. So in a nutshell, as far where speed is concerned, let's just say when you're beginning, I did, but I probably shouldn't have. I used a higher speed disc. I should have started at about a 9 or 10. A lot of the beginner boxes that you can buy on the Innova side, they have the Valkyries in them. Valkyrie is a perfect speed, perfectly understable to stable disc that would work perfectly for a beginner, and I wouldn't go any higher than that. But that's just my opinion. Feel free to go out there and buy a 13, 14, 15 speed disc. Give it a shot. But what you're going to find is until you get your form and your arm speed down, the disc really isn't going to react like you want it to. Unless you're a prodigy and you can just grab it and grip it and rip it from the word go. So that's speed. Let's jump over to glide. Glide is a little more, straightforward. Glide is exactly what it says. This maul is a speed 7. Not speed. Glide 7. Thank you. And my harp is a glide 3. T-Bird 3, glide 4, and so on. What that means is just the tendency or stability the disc has to stay in flight with the speed that you've put on it. The ones with the higher numbers, they actually glide a little more. They want to stay in the air a little more. The glide numbers range from about 1 to 7. So I have an array of different glide numbers on all of my discs. I have some that are 2, some that are 3. The maul 7, all the way up to 7. I really like the reason why I got the higher glides is because with my arm speed, I'm no spring chicken. The cat's out of the bag. But the reason why I got the higher glides is because I have enough arm speed to get the reaction out of the disc that I want, but I don't have the arm speed to get the distance I want. So what I do is I compensate there on the glide side to give me a little more airtime, if you will. So I'm slowly getting up there, but like I said, I'm just not as young as I used to be. The arm speed just isn't there like I want it to be. I'm trying, and I'm going to keep trying, and maybe one day I'll be able to reach 420 or whatever on a consistent basis instead of a small miracle when the wind's at my back. So, but that's the glide. It's very it's straightforward. Glide is what it is. It's how the disc glides. Now, when you're getting into the next set, which is your turn and your fade, that's when I'm going to revert back to talking about speed quite a bit. Because in order for that turn and the fade to react like it says it will on the disc, you've got to be throwing at that speed. So this maul, the maul has a turn of -2, and you're saying, Ed, all right, cut to the chase. What do the numbers mean? And I'll say that the numbers, let's just start out by saying the numbers on the turn vary from +1 to -5. What that means is the turn tells you how the disc is going to react when it first leaves your hand. So the turn is the high speed reaction and the fade is the low speed reaction. So the turn is at the beginning of your throw when it has all of its speed, and the fade is at the end of the flight, how it's going to react at the end. So, all right, let's talk about that just a minute. The maul is a -2. So what that tells me is, as a predominantly left-handed backhand backhand thrower, when I throw this disc, it is going to react right out of my hand, or shortly after it leaves my hand, it's going to turn back to the left a little bit. Now, if you're a right-hand backhand player, what that means for you is that when this disc leaves your hand, it's going to react by turning back to the right. It's shortly after it leaves your hand. Now, the number really determines how far that's going to break back to the right for a right-handed player, or to the left for a left-handed player when it leaves your hand. The more negative the number, whether it's -2, -3, -4, -5, the more negative that is, the more reaction you're going to get when it leaves your hand. Now you may be thinking to yourself, well, how's that going to help me? Well, this maul has seen a lot of airtime. So what I normally use this for is if I'm in a bad position and I have about 150 feet in front of me, maybe even 200 feet in front of me, I've got a tree that I need to go around. And it's open for me as a lefty, and it's open on the left-hand side if I go around it. Well, I'll throw this, and I'll put it out there and let the disc, because you have to be at least at a speed 7 for this thing to react. If you put more than a speed 7 on the disc, here's something I wanted to throw at you a little bit before, but I needed to talk to the turn real quick before I say this. If you put more than a 7 speed on this disc, when it leaves your hand, it's going to actually emphasize that turn a little more. So the more speed you put on it, the more reaction you're going to get out of this disc. So we know at a -2, it's going to come back, slightly, probably about 20, 30 feet. For me anyway, it does. It'll come back, and then it'll come right back just slightly, because we'll talk about the fade here in a minute. It doesn't have a high fade at the end of the flight, but it'll come back slightly. Now, I also have, like I was saying earlier, my T-Bird 3. T-Bird 3 has a 0 turn. Well, what does that mean? Well, the T-Bird 3, it has a speed of 8, glide of 4, and we've already talked about both of them. It has a turn of 0 and a fade of 2. So, at a 0 turn, we can say that this disc will most likely fly pretty true and pretty straight when it leaves your hand. Now, I will say, if you juice this, being an 8 speed, If you throw it harder than that, you're going to get a little reaction out of it, just a slight flip reaction. So you'll see it come to the left just a little bit, just because you're putting more speed on it than the disc really needs to react this way. And then at the end, it'll come back. So at a 0, you're expecting kind of a straight flight out of it. -2, you're expecting some, you're expecting a good, we'll call it a flip. It'll react and go to the left for a lefty when it first leaves your hand, or for a right-handed person, it'll go to the right, and then it'll come back. My Shrike, this one here, it's a speed 15, glide 6, and the turn is -2. So just like the Maul, it has both of them. But in order for the same reaction, the reaction I get out of this, if I expect it out of this one here, I really have to put more speed on it, because it is a speed 13. So you just reach back and you throw it, and you'll actually see that flight right as it leaves your hand. Jumping to the fade. The fade, like I said before, that is the low speed reaction. So once that disc starts slowing down, like with my Maul, you throw it at a speed 7 or somewhere thereabout. Glide 7, so it's cruising along pretty good. It's already left your hand. It's done this little break to the left if you're a lefty, right for a righty. And then what is it going to do at the end? Right, as it's losing its momentum and its speed. Well, the Maul itself has a 1 for the fade. The 1 basically tells you, all right, when you throw as a left-hander, me being a left-hander, when I throw it, that fade tells me just how it's going to react by breaking back to the right. All discs by nature, at the end of their flight, for a lefty, it's going to break back to the right. And for a right-handed person, it's going to break back to the left. Just by nature, by the way it's thrown, spinning in the air, and the weight distribution. So it's going to break that way. It wants to. If it's in the air long enough, it will eventually start breaking back at the end. So what a number 1 fade tells me is that this one has a tendency to kind of go forward and kind of ease back to the right for me. As a right-handed, if you're a right-handed player, at the end of the flight, it's going to ease back to the left. Now, it's not going to come back hard unless you get it way up in the air. If you keep it relatively low to the ground as you're throwing, what it's going to do is going to flip. It's going to flip as a lefty. It's going to turn to the left, and then at the end, it's going to start coming back slightly to the right. So what I do is I use this disc when I want more forward action out of the disc and not something that's going to dump out on me. The harp, my harp itself, it has a turn of 0 and a fade of 3. Well, what that tells me at a fade of 3, if I'm throwing this as an approach disc, I can throw it and make it go straight. But if it's in the air long enough, it will try to come back to the right for me. And as a right-handed player, it will come back to the left on you. So when I'm approaching, I use my harp predominantly for approach. I really don't use it as a putter because I just like the way that feels, and I can open up my grip a little bit and toss it up. I can put a little more on it than it requires. It is a speed 4. Sometimes it'll come back. It'll flip on me, but it'll come back. This is one of those discs. Anything with a fade of 3, it will come. A 3 or better, it's going to come back. It won't get caught up in the wind as much. So I have a lot of discs where if I throw it, let me find one here real quick. Aha, perfect one. The Kong. The Kong is a speed 12, glide 5, turn -1, and fade of 3. Now what that tells me is I know when I throw this disc, even if I've got a wind, a gust of wind in front of me, it It may turn a little more than I expected if the wind is, blowing in my face, but I know it'll come back at the end to the right. So that's what the fade tells you. It tells you just how hard the disc is going to come back. As a lefty, how hard it's going to come back to the right, and as a right-handed person, how hard it's going to come back to the left. So just to kind of bring it all together, and I've kind of been doing that as we go along, but I'm going to grab, but I wanted to bring it all together in one fell swoop. I just grabbed my Eagle out of the bag. My Eagle is a speed 7, a glide 4, a turn of -1, and a fade of 3. My Eagle, I love this disc. I throw this disc a lot. If you've ever watched any of our videos, if you see a white disc in my hand and I'm 250 or 275 out, I'm most likely throwing the Eagle. I do push it sometimes up to 300, but it just depends on the situation. That's not the point of this conversation. What we have, like I said, we have a speed of 7, glide of 4, turn of -1, and a fade of 3. So, take you through that flight, that pattern of flight. If I throw this disc straight at a speed of 7, I'm going to get a pretty decent glide out of it. Now, when it originally leaves my hand, when it first leaves my hand, when it has all its speed, you're going to see it. I will see, because I'm a lefty, and I keep saying that because I don't want anyone to get confused. It will break back to the left just slightly, but then I know it's going to come back pretty good for me. And it doesn't come back. It doesn't dump hard unless I get it way up in the air, but it does come back guaranteed for me. I throw this one in the wind quite a bit, and I can depend on it. I can depend on it with no wind at all. And when it flies like I want it to, there's a happy Ed when that happens. So that's kind of how the numbers, the flight rating, if you will, that's how it's all defined. Now, I hope this video has been helpful, and I hope it's been entertaining. So drop me a comment. Let me know if you enjoyed it. Let me know if it helped, informative. I don't normally do these types of videos, but this was a request, and I wanted to make sure that, if one person has this request, I know there's got to be a lot of people that are looking for this type of information as well. So I figured I would throw it out there for everyone. So thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it helped. I hope it was informative. If you have any questions, feel free to drop me comments. I'll do my best to answer them. If not, we've got the rest of the TDG family that can help me out on the answers. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Ding that bell so you know when our next videos are coming out. And check us out on Instagram too. So thanks again for watching. I know I've said it. I can't thank you guys enough. I do appreciate all of your guys' comments. I appreciate all the interaction. And I am rambling now. So let's cut this to the chase. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.